let's let some other people talk. Who's up next? Aaron, you want to grab the mic?
My bad, y'all. I'm in here with my family, so I'm gonna get to a little quieter spot. But yeah, I'm in here basically just to connect the dots. Like I forget who the person was saying it earlier, so I apologize. But I'm in here to connect the dots, and just like someone else said, basically provide, I guess, perspective to what I know, and also get some perspective on things that I don't know. I'm trying to set up teams to move myself forward as an independent artist and as a independent entrepreneur as well, with my brand. So I'm always just open to strategizing and coming up with just new ideas to move the needle and to move just culture forward. Because I feel like with creative endeavors, it's basically your gift to humanity. You know what I mean? Once you make something and put it out there, outside of the ownership thing, it's kind of not yours anymore. It's your gift to the world. So I want to just figure out how I can be more effective in connecting with people, honestly.
What he said about putting a product out, I feel the same way about Clubhouse. Like, it's out now, it becomes what it becomes based on its user base. But I don't want to go back to that old topic. But I will say this, moderators, I guess that's what they're for, right? The moderators will moderate the room and will dictate in which direction we speak. So I think we should be giving out less green badges, and moderators are more directing the conversations in each room.
Hey, Aaron, I can appreciate what you said. I think I talked about connecting the dots, but I think, look, like, there are people who have all different backgrounds on here, and that's the beautiful thing. And so, some people have been doing this for 20 years. Some people have been doing this for 6 months, trying to figure out like a new path at a time when by choice or by chance, like, their life was disrupted because of COVID, right? And that's where this gets interesting, because it's different people talking at different levels. And it's the interaction where I don't know where you are, but like, I'm on the Upper East Side, New York, and this is how our paths cross, and that's kind of a cool thing, right? I think that's the intersection, and I think I think we lost Maximilian, but that's the part where to his point, I think people who have experience in domains and rooms that have a theme, there's that pairing, right? You become the moderator, you take ownership, and you sort of like help to control the dialogue based on your experience and what you know, and you introduce that to people who want to learn and want to have a conversation. It's that simple.
No, that's facts, and I haven't been in the room that long, but for the limited amount of time that I have been in the room, man, you guys are killing it. Like, I'm just happy to be in here, honestly.
One of the things I was thinking, and I kind of jumped in, so I'm just picking up pieces. To one person's point in regards of finding somebody a level above you and a level below, like, I like that concept. So that way it constantly keeps you growing as well as giving back. I think one of the things I appreciate about this platform, compared to others, and where I think Gen Z does really well, is like storytelling and monetizing, which, like, if that's not your strength, for me, for example, it's been kind of challenging. Like, I can think and I can speak about what I think, but child, if you want me to try to create images and graphics and books and all this different type of stuff, and I think that's what they do very well. The third point was in regards to someone said, like, the deeper the topic, kind of the less public the room, or the less public. And I actually was in a room earlier, and I kind of asked about that, like, is there a level of exclusivity, because depending on the control of the moderators and how they're able to keep the conversation focused, it's very easy to meet low expectations. So then the conversation goes to the lowest hanging fruit, for lack of better words. And so I'm not sure what that looks like, because I think when things get large and distracted, those same conversations that you were attracted to that were deep and thoughtful, um, they leave, right? Because you have a group of people that want to be challenged in thought and discussion, and in my experience, they just don't stay around foolishness long. And so those are the thoughts that came up so far from the conversations I've heard.
Yeah, I appreciate you sharing that. I think you hit on a couple really good elements. Yeah, the framework I was mentioning was one up, one down mentoring. I know Michael asked about that as well. I'll send him some docs. And I think that'd be interesting to see how we can kind of pull each other up. And then I think you hit on a second thing of like, what's it mean to be a good moderator, right? Like that role is still undefined with how moderators are used in different rooms. And I'm curious, has anyone seen like moderator training rooms or anything like that? I haven't. They might exist. I see a lot of like new Clubhouse member rules, but I think it might be cool to see if there's ways to help moderators facilitate better discussion, because that it could create more like equitable thought in the room. I'm not sure if anyone has any thoughts about that, but that's what kind of brought it up for me, Chase.
There's
It'd
one
be cool to
person.
have somebody say something like ways to, moderate a great room, or ways to curate great conversations, because I've only been on here for like 2-3 days. I don't know what's going on. I just press buttons and hop in. So I don't know what, sometimes I got a green badge, sometimes I don't. I don't know what it is, but but it'd be cool to kind of have some kind of, and then even for people that want to start conversations, like, okay, great, you've got an idea. Now what?
Right. Kind of that, giving them that support to learn. That's interesting. And just for anyone, like I'm going to let a few other speakers know that, but you're right. Like someone should create like, hey, here are my best practices to being a good moderator on Clubhouse. Because there are people who are like, hey, let's take a moment to reset the room. And they spend 5-10 minutes, every 5-10 minutes just sharing like the goals. Technically we've kind of gone off the topic of Gen Z digital marketing and social media, and have been really talking about Clubhouse theory, which is interesting, but also off topic. Maybe we have failed our jobs as good moderators on this room, as it was handed off to us pretty quickly. So just want to
the
call that
original
out.
people who created this room, they dipped. So I was like,
Yeah,
whoa, wait, what just happened right now?
Exactly.
But I think
and
a
that's
good room evolves also. I think a good room, if you bring in enough conversation and questions, it never stays on the original topic. And I love moderators that reset the room, because, if you come in and you're like, now what y'all talking about? But I think that it shows testament to the room if you're able to continue to grow an audience and watch a conversation grow from just the original topic.
Right, because I was saying I'm new to Clubhouse in general, so thank you for allowing me to be a speaker and have a voice. So I like how you're switching and giving everyone an opportunity to talk and have a platform. So I think that's really great. I just wanted to say that.
Nick, I think there's something of value too to almost the anti-villain to your point though as well, and that's there isn't formal moderator work. There isn't formal here's how you do this, and I think that's actually one of the things, in my opinion, that makes Clubhouse not only appealing to people but to folks like myself that may have been in our industry for a little bit of time. It also lets me identify people that know subject matter expert versus people that just know the buzzwords. So I think that's almost a skill set that Clubhouse helps facilitate, is learning to be that speaker, learning when to take your turn speaking. It's almost the unofficial rules seem to be forming better rules than established rules do.
I think where all this goes is that, Clubhouse becomes kind of like the next form of, like, we'll call it talk radio, right? Or podcasts. But the role of the moderator is the host, right? And so what's really interesting to me is actually, if you spend time, the longer you spend on here, for some of you guys who are new, you'll see that the same people start to kind of like take control of the rooms, and they're trying to build their presence. And, the most obvious example is Joe Budden, right? Joe Budden is on here like 24/7,
All the time.
right? And he's done it incredibly well in the podcast world, right? And and he's built that personality and that brand, and I think he views this as his next platform. And I think you've got a bunch of like mini Joe Buddens popping up, and they're not talking about the same subject matter, but they're trying to establish their brand equity in certain certain arenas, and they'll run the show how they want to based on like kind of like the context of the room, right? So, for a room about marketing, I think we've got quorum here. I think it's pretty like kind of relaxed and pretty chill. Some of those other rooms, like late at night, like totally different story. And so, there's no right or no wrong. I think, a lot of it is like you figure it out on the fly, but I think a lot of it is also, what do you want your personality to be if that's the route you want to take and the reason you're on here?
I want to ask Matt a little bit of a pointed question, but only because I've been in a ton of rooms now with Matt and I love speaking with him. Matt, how would you address the people though that don't want to build a brand, that are actually coming on here to learn? Are there any titles, keywords, formatting of even room names that you can point out that may help those that are just looking to learn rather than build the next platform presence?
That's funny. I was talking about that earlier. I think the most interesting thing that I've learned on here is how to listen better, right? And how to really kind of like pause. And, I think like it's funny, like, we all kind of have that trigger finger when we're like on stage, right? And you want to like get off mute. But the tough part is to listen and be patient and to know when you can contribute valuably and when you're just like spewing hot air. And there are a lot of people who are just talking to talk, right? And I was talking about this like 15 minutes ago, so we can get off that subject. But there's no like real rhyme or reason to discovery. I think discovery for me, like personally, I look at like who's online. I look at people who I like talking to, like you, for example. We've crossed paths a couple times. You're a smart guy. We do the same thing, right? Like, it's always an interesting dialogue. If you're in a room where the context makes sense, great. I'll hop in. If it's, like talking about something that either like I have no interest in or, like it's just basically a bunch of people who are like word babbling, I'll just hop out. Like it's that simple, right? Like there's always an alternative. And there are very few times because as the app has scaled, like you start to look at this. Again, I don't know how long some of you guys have been on here, but if you're on here 2 months ago, if you were to log on at 9 a.m., there were like 6 people on here, right? This is now a 24/7 medium, and I think that's having that. Sorry, having those options, right, and knowing that there's like diversity of choice is a great thing because then you're also forced to, in some respects, get out of your comfort zone if you want to spend more time listening to subjects that you may not have like gotten on here to like learn about or discover, but like I don't know. I mean, there's so much like content around music, for example, in the in the music industry, and I find myself like hovering in those rooms. I don't want to be the loudest guy in the room. I just want to like pick up a couple like interesting facts that I can go talk to like friends of mine who work in the music business and be like, shit, like I'm a little more knowledgeable. And that's really interesting. And, if I can pick up, different paths that way, then it's awesome. But again, it's, I think the beauty of this is it's truly all what you make of it.
I think you hit on 2 points there that I would love to touch on. One thing for me that's been interesting is learning when to shut the fuck up. Because sometimes I notice in myself, I'm like talking and I'm kind of going on a tangent here a little house where we made this kind of like funny pact that if we're in the same room and you hear me over talking or just like rambling on, to please send me a text message and literally just say shut up. And we do that for one another, not just because of Clubhouse, but also for like our ability to articulate points better or to keep someone like interested and stuff like that. So for me, it's been really good for self-evaluation of like, maybe you could have said that answer in 30 seconds and not 3 minutes. And then, there's another point that I had that I wanted to touch on that you said, but I completely lost my train of thought. But yeah, that for me has been one of the inherently random benefits that I've, found is just shut up maybe a little bit more.
It's like virtual Toastmasters. Like you really see it in listening to others that kind of go on forever or they go on for tangents and you're like, oh my gosh, if they don't be quiet, I'm just going to have to leave. And then you look and you're like, do I do that? So I totally agree. Like having that buddy system.
Yeah. Cause for me, like when it's like, hey Chase, introduce yourself and what do you do? I noticed that I was rambling. So I literally, because of like what you just said, watching other people, I literally wrote out on my phone at night, like this little blurb of like what I say when people ask me to introduce myself. So I'm more concise, more to the point, and more like straightforward. Whereas before I'd be like, well, like, I do that. It's like no one wants to hear that. Like, just get to
But
the
it's
point.
very interesting too, because I don't, like I said, I'm very new on here, and I'm not sure if this is supposed to be everybody's resume, but like people, like even in their bio, like they're like, this is what I do. And then if they
Right.
speak, they're like, hi, I'm Chase from Houston. I help people fund their perfect lives through
The
real
cover
estate.
letter.
And then they
Right.
lead into their point. And I'm like, and I like it because it helps like it makes you dig deeper. Like, oh, let me click their profile. Is this someone I want to
But
follow?
it's kind
But
of like a dating profile, right?
But
Like,
but
you
unlike
sell
anything
yourself.
else I've seen, like people have like resume bio.
But then it's also like confusing because everyone's on mute, so you don't know when to talk. You don't know who's agreeing with you. You can't see their faces. It's like, oh my
Well, you
gosh, I don't know if I
tap
should.
your mute button. That means you're clapping. If you
Is
Oh,
that what that means? I thought that means you had bad
it's
reception.
a polite and quiet way to be like yes without everybody
Oh,
all at once saying that.
I did
I
not
thought
know
that
that.
meant that they were trying to be quiet. It was just a little audio.
No, I did too. And then do you know what PTR is?
No.
That means
Pull
pull
to refresh.
refresh. Exactly. So you just, like, if you see the topic of this room, if you put your finger on that and drag it down lightly and let go, the people's profiles pictures will refresh. So a lot of people use their profile pictures to communicate.
What do you guys
post
think about that?
memes. I love it. I think
What,
it's super
PTR?
fun.
Yeah.
I still don't understand it. So I'm pulling to refresh.
Yeah,
Why?
so like I'll show you an example. Hold on, give me
Right.
one.
But
second.
also I had a question for Matt when you were saying like you hate going into like chats and it's the same moderators like Joe Budden and everyone. Do you think, I don't know if you are a creator or Michael or Nick.
No,
maybe it's a question for you guys.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. I didn't read your bio yet.
That's okay. No, it's not that exciting,
PTR.
trust me.
But I was just going to ask, like, is there a way to limit how many times someone can be a moderator, how many times someone can speak in a day? I don't know, to give everyone else a voice or everyone else an opportunity to talk.
That's part of the reason why I like rooms that are this size. I don't want to be in a room with like 500 people. If I'm in a room with 500 people, then, I think there are a couple things, right? One is it usually decompensates really quickly. Just to be very honest. It's very hard. It's like, how many of you guys like got on like Zoom happy hours, right? And like, all of a sudden there were like 50 people on there and you're like, whoa, everybody's talking at once. This is the worst thing ever.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing. So if you have a manageable number of people, it's just a far better user experience.
Quality.
Yeah, I mean,
over quantity.
And people seem to be more respectful. I've noticed like this. I'm not going to say the smaller because you want enough people in there to drive conversation. However, for the majority of the rooms I've been in, people let people speak their thought. And then the next person, like, it's this, I don't even know how it's figured out, but I do like that versus where when the room is big, it just turns into like shouting and yelling. What I do think would be cool if there was like a little chat feature, like if you want to comment or if you want to respond or reply to something somebody said, but you don't necessarily have to have the mic because it's not that
So we were
stereotypical.
actually sitting in a room with the founders of the app not too long ago, and they even actually touched on this point. And they said one of the reasons why that you can't see people's faces, there's not video, there's not chat right now, is they're trying to enrich that direct experience of either listening or learning or talking or socializing. It keeps the distractions away. You're not getting pinged with 50 million alerts. You're not getting drowned in information.
Yeah, that's one of the things I like about like when you get a new follower on here, right? You don't get a notification. Like, you get a little red dot, right? Like when you go back to the home screen, but it doesn't interrupt like your train of thought while you're in the ring.
Yeah, one thing I would say, looking back on that other app that I constantly keep bringing up, Blab, the chat was cool, but it led to people not going on stage as much anymore. And then a lot of times the rooms would be like 2 people on stage and then 600 people just having a chat log that was just spiraling up and down super fast. And the other thing too was that it was really distracting when you're on stage. You would be wanting to kind of like, you know, bring in the chat dynamic to the actual like call or like whatever the room was about. But you would notice people would go off tangent because maybe people would put like, you know, fuck you, asshole, or something like that. And people just look over and like, wait, what happened? And then you're like, oh shit, people are arguing. Like, it's a little bit difficult. Like, I'm not right now going to argue with Matt. I might be a little bit more argumentative in text. Like, nah, Matt, you don't know what you're talking about. But to say it vocally, there's like some kind of accountability that I don't think people are really going to do, which I think is actually a good thing, because I wouldn't want to be like, yo, Matt, shut the fuck up. That's like hella rude and I'll get kicked out of the room. But in text format, that might be a little bit like, he's just joking, or that might be funny or whatever, you know? So yeah, the text one, that's a little bit like interesting to me.
Yeah, that's a great point. I didn't think about it, but that totally makes sense. And maybe that's why the conversations are good, is because there's not so much distraction. I didn't.
It's also there's no record, right? Like, you know, there are a lot of things that I'll say on here that I probably would never put in writing. Right. Like, you know, I speak very openly about what I do and, you know, how I view my industry and how I view potentially competitors or, you know, players in the space. And like, if you ask me to give my opinion on Google, I'll give it to you by voice. No problem. Right. But like, I'm not going to put something in writing that someone can then, you know, can then use for nefarious purposes, right? Like,
maybe y'all can tell me though, because I've been in a couple rooms where they said like people are recording the conversations and then attempting to redistribute or resell them. Like, I'm not quite sure how that happens, but I was in a room where people raised a lot of concern that you know, people were recording.
Yeah, I think that was that Kevin Hart situation, right? Also, and I'm not Kevin Hart, so I'm not worried about that. But you know, I think for the most part, again, this was a subject that came up here, I don't know, on here probably like a month and a half, 2 months ago. And, you know, I think it's, you kind of have to have confidence that, or operate in confidence that the people around you, you know, it's kind of like the trust principle. But you also have to be smart, right? We're all brands. Like, the internet lives in perpetuity. Like, no matter what you say or no matter what you do, it's out there somewhere forever. So, you know, I think you just have to keep a handle on it.
I think someone asked this earlier, or even brought this up, but it goes directly to your point, Matt. And that's someone asked if there was another almost level of exclusivity that exists. And that's where I've seen the clubs come into play, is the club specific rooms where I've noticed folks like yourself or Michael or others of that level where they're much more willing to talk, but it's that extra step that seems to keep out like the crazy, so to speak. I mean, it's not really a natural process. There's no real exclusivity. You just click the follow button. But the fact that it's not on that main page, it's not people bouncing in and out randomly. And I think that's another valuable thing on here because, like you said, it gives folks the ability to talk about things they wouldn't put in writing. That's one of my favorite things. I used to go to conventions all the time, was not to really do anything else, but to talk with people about opinions they wouldn't share otherwise. And I think it's important.
Yeah, look, you know, ultimately you have a democratized experience, right? We're all equals here, and that's beautiful. Like, that's a beautiful, beautiful thing.
Michael, I think you brought up earlier too, something that I thought was really valuable, at least from my personal perspective as a speaker, and that was the buddy system. One of the things I think a lot of people, if you want like a really positive habit or something helpful to do for the speaking community, if you see rooms that have subject matter or people that you recognize in there, it's something I like doing, hop in, and if you have a question you know is valuable just in general, lob that to the moderators. Give them something cool to talk about. A lot of times rooms can slow down or stale out, but if I see friends of mine in rooms that I know are like experts on certain things, I'll hop in and ask them a question I know they'll be able to speak strongly on and contribute to the room on.
Is there a way that you can message them if you have a question without actually speaking? Or you would, like you said, hold like the buddy system. What if there's someone that's a moderator that you don't know? Is there a way to message them and ask a question and not actually speak?
Not that I'm aware of, but I've also never had a single room I've ever joined where someone hasn't, if you hit the ask the talk button, at least respected you asking your one question and then stepping down.
Well, I've only been in like big chats today, so I can understand like how you were saying not having a voice when it's like 500 people in there. You're just listening and it's just people talking over one another and it's not very productive at all. Like, this conversation is very, like the first conversation that I've had where it's very productive for me personally.
Yeah, I mean,
Sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say the buddy system that I did, it was just literally just talking to people pretty often on here. Like, let's say, Kevin, now that you mentioned this, maybe, you know, we connect on Instagram or you give me your phone number, something like that. That's just how I did it. It was really organically. A couple people I already knew outside of the actual app Clubhouse, like more on a personal level. So it really was like, hey, you know, if you ever see me doing this or that, like, please let me know. If you want, I'll do the same. It's just like an organic thing. It wasn't really just kind of like a strategy. I guess technically it's a strategy, but it was more for like personal self-development and not so much like thinking of key features for the app or something like that. It was more of like I said, I just felt like maybe I'm rambling about conversations and topics, and maybe I could just do a little bit better and be more, you know, self-evaluating. But yeah. Kind of funny and random. I don't think we've actually technically talked about Gen Z digital marketing and social media for the most part from the original creators of this room. Kind of funny.
So maybe now it's time to start.
Well, Matt, you know what I wanted to do with maybe you, the guy Darwin. I think you know who Darwin is. You've probably seen him on here, and maybe like a couple other people. I love the idea of doing a weekly room like every Friday. That was like what's new in social media, and just going through new key features, like some things that were really, really big and pivotal. You know, like for example, Amazon's launching their pharmacy thing now, so now they can deliver your pharmaceutical medicines within a 1 day to 2 hour window. I thought that's a really big move. And I think that would be interesting to dissect, you know, like just basically like all the new things that come out on a higher level of like, what is the implications of this? Why do you think Amazon's doing that? You know, Walmart, they had a 70% increase in their e-com sales the last quarter. I think that might be kind of a fun, interesting thing to try to have weekly, or just let's go over it on some like bigger, like bird's eye view, kind of like deep level.
Yeah, that's cool. Just not on Fridays. Fridays, I'm burnt. But
what's a good day for you? Monday?
Any other day of the week, right? You know, I think Friday is like, you know, it's kind of like Zoom happy hours. It's, you know, I gotta call it quits for a little bit, but we'll figure it out. There are some rooms like that. They're interesting. I'll send them over to you.
I thought of it just being like there's a list and just go through it, and like each one being like 10-15 minutes, then move on. Because I know we could probably, let's say, Snapchat Spotlight. Probably I could talk about that for an hour on its own, and why they did it, the implications, what they're blah blah. But I thought the idea of like section it out, 10-15 minutes, talk about it, let's keep it moving, and then that's it. You know, just to, I don't know, give it like a more broader perspective on it versus just being like, oh, they're just copying TikTok. But more of like, well, why are they doing it? What's that going to mean for the atmosphere of the app or growth or whatever, you know?
Yeah, I think I have a friend. His name's Zach Colis. He's a VC. He hosts a couple like fireside chats on here every week with a bunch of other VCs, and it's like incredible, right? It's great, useful, timely, really interesting stuff. Like, you know, if you're going to invest in creating a format, like that's the kind of like format to follow. You know, you have an agenda, you know, you start to build an audience, and you know, and you start to kind of follow concurrent themes.
Who was that person? So I can find all of them.
His name is Zach, Zach. Last name Coelius. And his fireside chats are, I don't know, like Tuesdays and Thursdays or something, but they're remarkable, like really, really good.
Awesome. I just right now follow them. If you wouldn't mind in the future, if you can remember, it's not too taxing on your mind, could you just ping me in it, and I'll just probably hop in case I don't see it on my Explore feed, or not Explore feed. What the fuck? I'm thinking of TikTok right now, or Instagram, not even TikTok. If I I don't see it on the home run, sure, or the home feed. Cool. Hallway, there we go. There's too many fucking names that describe the same thing on too many apps where I'm like, which one's which right now?
So you've got a couple